The morning sun barely peeked through the worn curtains of Ethan Morales' small apartment. He moved quickly through the cramped kitchen, preparing Sophia's lunch while simultaneously trying to button his work shirt. The clock on the wall seemed to tick faster than usual, mocking his attempts to keep up with the morning rush. "Sophia, honey, 5 minutes until we need to leave," he called out, his voice carrying down the short hallway to her bedroom. "Coming, Dad." Sophia's cheerful reply floated back. Ethan glanced at the pile of bills on the counter and pushed them aside. That was a worry for another time. Right now, he needed to focus on getting them both out the door. His reflection in the microwave door showed dark circles under his eyes from another late shift, but he managed to smile when Sophia bounced into the kitchen. "Did you remember to pack your science homework?" he asked, zipping up her lunch bag. Sophia nodded, her backpack already slung over her shoulders. "And my art project, too." She paused, studying his face with that perceptive look that sometimes made her seem older than her 10 years. "Did you get enough sleep, Dad?" "Sure did, Princess." The lie came easily, wrapped in love and protection. "Come on, let's get going before the traffic gets bad." The morning proceeded as planned until his cell phone rang just after noon. Ethan was in the middle of cleaning the third-floor bathrooms when the school's number flashed on his screen. His heart dropped as he answered. "Mr. Morales?" The school nurse's voice was apologetic. "Sophia's running a fever. She needs to go home." Ethan closed his eyes, leaning against the bathroom wall. But there was nothing to figure out. His usual backup sitter was away, and he couldn't afford to miss another shift. With heavy steps, he collected Sophia from school, her small face flushed with fever. "I'm sorry, Dad," she whispered in the car. "Hey, none of that." He reached over to squeeze her hand. "We'll make it work. We always do." That evening, Ethan transformed a corner of the janitorial supply office into a makeshift rest area. He arranged some clean drop cloths into a comfortable spot, setting out Sophia's favorite coloring books, snacks, and her tablet. "Now remember, Princess, you need to stay right here while I work," he instructed, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Her skin still felt warm. "Try to get some sleep if you can." Sophia nodded, already looking sleepy. "I will, Dad." For the first hour, everything went according to plan. Ethan checked on her between tasks, finding her either coloring or dozing. But during one of his rounds, he returned to find the corner empty. Panic seized his chest. "Sophia?" he called out, trying to keep his voice calm despite his racing heart. Racing through the hallways, Ethan's footsteps echoed against the marble floors. He checked each corridor until he spotted movement through the glass walls of the main boardroom. His heart nearly stopped. There stood Sophia, in her purple pajamas and fuzzy socks, in the middle of what appeared to be a major business meeting. A dozen executives in expensive suits sat around a massive table, their presentations frozen on the screen behind them. Ethan burst through the door, face flushed with embarrassment and exertion. "I'm so sorry," he stammered, hurrying to take Sophia's hand. "She's sick. And I had no sitter. I'm the night janitor. I'll get her out right away." A security guard appeared in the doorway, ready to escort them out. One of the executives, a man with a stern face and silver hair, was already rising from his chair with an annoyed expression, but something in Ethan snapped. Maybe it was exhaustion, or worry about Sophia's fever, or the weight of years struggling to keep everything together. Words poured out before he could stop them. "You know what?" His voice trembled but grew stronger with each word. "Everyone in this room is talking about success and profit margins. But real success is measured by how well we care for those who depend on us. It's about showing up every single day. Even when you're tired. Even when it seems impossible. Because someone is counting on you to be there." The room fell into complete silence. Ethan could hear his own heartbeat thundering in his ears. Sophia's small hand squeezed his, and he squeezed back gently. At the head of the table sat Margaret Whitfield, the CEO whose reputation for being tough and uncompromising was legendary throughout the building. She had been studying some papers, but now she slowly raised her head, her steel-gray eyes fixed on Ethan with an intensity that made him want to step back. She leaned forward in her chair, perfectly manicured hands folding on the table in front of her. "Would you?" she said, her voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Please repeat what you just said?" Ethan stood frozen before the elegant conference table, his weathered janitor's uniform a stark contrast against the sea of crisp business suits surrounding him. Sophia's small fingers dug into his leg as she pressed herself against him, half hiding from the stern faces staring back at them. The morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows made the polished wood surface gleam, reflecting the tense expressions of the executives seated around it. Margaret Whitfield's steel-gray eyes fixed on him with an intensity that made him want to step backward. Instead, he straightened his shoulders, one hand protectively touching Sophia's head. "Please," Margaret said, her voice firm but not unkind. "Repeat what you just said about success." Ethan swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. The words had tumbled out in panic moments ago. Now, with everyone waiting, they felt stuck somewhere between his racing heart and trembling lips. He glanced down at Sophia, who looked up at him with complete trust in her eyes. That gave him courage. "I said that real success isn't just about profit margins or market share. It's about how well we care for the people who depend on us." A man in an expensive suit at the far end of the table scoffed quietly. But Margaret leaned forward, her manicured fingers interlaced on the table. "Go on," she encouraged. Ethan took a deep breath. "Look, I'm just a janitor. I clean these offices at night while you make big decisions during the day. But I know something about family and sacrifice." His hand gently squeezed Sophia's shoulder. "Every morning, I make my daughter's lunch, help her with homework, and try to be both mother and father to her. Success, to me, is seeing her smile despite everything we don't have." The room remained silent, but something in the atmosphere shifted. A younger executive pulled out her phone and began taking notes. "Your campaign talks about family values," Ethan continued, surprising himself with his boldness. "But from what I overheard, it sounds like something from a textbook. Real families aren't perfect. They're messy. They're about showing up even when you're exhausted. They're about choosing your kids' needs over your own. Every single time." Margaret's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "And what would you say about our proposed slogan, excellence in family living?" A few executives shifted uncomfortably in their chairs. Ethan almost laughed. "Honestly, it sounds like something written by people who spend more time in boardrooms than living rooms." The words came out before he could stop them, and he immediately tensed, expecting security to appear. Instead, Margaret's lips curved slightly. "Interesting." She turned to the marketing director. "James, make a note of that." Her attention returned to Ethan. "What would you suggest instead?" Sophia tugged at his pant leg, and Ethan automatically reached down to lift her onto his hip, despite her being almost too big for it. The action was so natural, so ingrained, he didn't even think about how it might look to the roomful of executives. "Maybe something real," he said, adjusting Sophia's weight. "Family isn't perfect, it's worth it." Or, "Every family has a story. Make yours count." He shrugged. "Just something that actual parents might relate to." The young executive who'd been taking notes nodded enthusiastically, while others exchanged glances ranging from thoughtful to dismissive. James, the marketing director, looked like he'd bitten into something sour. Margaret stood up, commanding attention without effort. "Ladies and gentlemen, I believe we need to seriously reconsider our approach." She walked around the table, her heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Mr. Morales has given us something valuable today: authenticity." Ethan felt his cheeks grow warm. He hadn't meant to give them anything. He'd just been trying to get Sophia out of trouble. "Mr. Morales," Margaret addressed him directly, "I'd like you to come back tomorrow. We could use your perspective as we revise our campaign strategy." The room erupted in murmured conversations. James started to protest. "But Mrs. Whitfield," Margaret silenced him with a look. "James, when was the last time you had to choose between paying for your child's medicine and making rent? When did you last have to bring your daughter to work because you had no other choice?" Her voice was sharp but controlled. "We're marketing to real families. Perhaps it's time we listened to one." Ethan stood there, stunned, Sophia still perched on his hip. This couldn't be happening. Things like this didn't happen to people like him. "Mrs. Whitfield, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not qualified." "You're exactly qualified," she interrupted. "Tomorrow, 9 a.m., we'll arrange for proper childcare for Sophia if needed." She turned back to the table. Meeting adjourned. The executives began gathering their things, some looking irritated, others curious. Ethan remained rooted to the spot until Margaret gestured toward the door, snapping him out of his daze. He turned and walked out, Sophia's arms wrapped around his neck, his mind spinning. Just before the door closed behind them, he heard Margaret's voice addressing someone, and get HR to arrange proper compensation for his time. In the hallway, Ethan set Sophia down, his arms trembling slightly. Whether from holding her too long or from the surreal experience he'd just had, he wasn't sure. "Dad?" Sophia looked up at him, her dark eyes serious. "Are we in trouble?" Ethan stared at the closed door of the conference room, still trying to process what had just happened. "No, sweetheart," he said slowly. "I don't think we are. I don't know what we are." Steam rose from the pot of boiling pasta as Ethan stirred the simple dinner, his mind still reeling from the day's events. The small kitchen of their apartment felt worlds away from that gleaming boardroom. Sophia sat at their tiny kitchen table, her feet swinging excitedly as she colored in one of her favorite books. And then Daddy talked to all the fancy people, Sophia announced to her stuffed bear propped up in the chair next to her. "He was just like a real boss." Ethan couldn't help but chuckle, though uncertainty gnawed at his stomach. "I wouldn't say that, sweetheart. I just happened to be in the right place at the wrong time. But Mrs. Whitfield liked what you said," Sophia insisted, putting down her crayon. "I saw her smile, Daddy. She never smiles." "You noticed that, huh?" Ethan drained the pasta and added a pat of butter. "It wasn't fancy, but it would do. Still doesn't make me a boss, though." "Why not?" Sophia's question was innocent, but it hit him hard. "Because, mija," he served her plate, "I'm the janitor. That's my job. And there's nothing wrong with that. It puts food on our table, doesn't it?" The next morning came too quickly. Ethan arrived early for his shift, hoping to avoid any awkward conversations. But as he walked through the maintenance area, the whispers followed him like shadows. "Well, if it isn't our resident executive." Jerry, another janitor, called out. The words dripped with sarcasm. "Gonna grace us with your presence today, or are you too important for cleaning duties now?" Ethan kept his head down, focusing on gathering his supplies. "Come on, Jerry. You know it wasn't like that." Sure. Lisa chimed in from her locker. "Just happened to stumble into a meeting and catch the CEO's eye. Some people have all the luck." "Luck?" Ethan turned to face them, his voice tight. "You call having no choice but to bring my sick kid to work luck? Having no backup plan, no safety net, that's lucky to you?" Before anyone could respond, Ethan's phone buzzed. His heart dropped when he saw the caller ID, Margaret Whitfield. "Mr. Morales." Her crisp voice came through the speaker. "I trust you're available for this afternoon's follow-up meeting?" 2 o'clock sharp. Ethan glanced at his cleaning schedule. "Mrs. Whitfield, I appreciate the invitation, but this isn't an invitation, Mr. Morales. Your perspective was valuable yesterday, and we need more of it. I've already cleared it with your supervisor." The silence stretched between them until Ethan finally replied, "Yes, ma'am. I'll be there." After hanging up, he quickly dialed Sophia's after-school program. "Hey, it's Mr. Morales. I might be a little late picking up Sophia today. Could you?" A small cough interrupted him from the other end. "Actually, Mr. Morales, Sophia's been coughing quite a bit today. We were about to call you." Ethan's stomach clenched. "Is it bad?" "Should I come now?" "She says she's fine, just tired. But you might want to keep an eye on it." He found Sophia curled up with a book when he picked her up. "Daddy, are you going to—" "Yeah, baby. But I promise we'll get ice cream after, okay? To make up for being late?" He felt her forehead. No fever, at least. "Can we get chocolate?" Another cough escaped her, deeper this time. "Whatever you want." He hugged her close, trying to ignore how raspy her breathing sounded. "It's probably just a cold, right? Nothing some rest won't fix." That night, after their ice cream adventure and a warm bath, Ethan tucked Sophia into bed. Her favorite nightlight cast star-shaped patterns on the ceiling, but they didn't seem as bright as usual. Or maybe it was just his worried mind playing tricks on him. Sophia coughed again, the sound echoing in their quiet apartment. She shifted under her blanket, trying to get comfortable. "Daddy, will you tell me about Mommy again?" The question caught him off guard, She hadn't asked about her mother in months. "What do you want to know, mija?" The question caught him off guard. Was she brave, like you were today? Ethan's throat tightened. She was the bravest person I knew. He smoothed her hair back from her forehead. "Now try to get some sleep, okay?" He waited until her breathing evened out, though each wheeze made his heart clench. Standing up slowly, he moved to the window, pushing aside the worn curtain. The city lights twinkled below, full of promise and possibility. But tonight, they seemed to mock him with their brightness. Tomorrow he'd have to step into that boardroom again, pretend he belonged there. And here was Sophia, getting sick just when things might be looking up. The timing felt cruel, like life was playing some cosmic joke on him. A car horn blared from the street below, and Sophia stirred in her sleep, another cough shaking her small frame. Ethan turned back to watch her, caught between the hope of what tomorrow might bring and the fear of what that cough could mean. The moonlight cast long shadows across Sophia's bedroom floor, and Ethan stood there, listening to his daughter's uneven breathing, feeling more alone than he had in a long time. He wanted to believe this was their chance, that maybe, just maybe, things were finally changing for the better. But that rattling cough seemed to echo with warnings he wasn't ready to hear. Ethan stood outside the gleaming boardroom doors, his worn work uniform a stark contrast to the polished surroundings. His hands trembled slightly as he smoothed down his janitor's shirt, wishing he had something more appropriate to wear. Through the glass walls, he could see the executives in their crisp suits, their laptops open and ready. "Mr. Morales?" Margaret's voice came from behind him, making him jump. "Right on time." She looked different in the morning light, still commanding, but there was a hint of warmth in her eyes that hadn't been there yesterday. She gestured for him to follow her into the boardroom. "Everyone," Margaret announced to the room, "I'd like you to meet Ethan Morales. He'll be serving as our consultant for authenticity on the family campaign." The words hung in the air. Ethan felt his face grow hot as several executives exchanged skeptical glances. One man in an expensive suit barely concealed a smirk. "Please, take a seat," Margaret said, pointing to an empty chair. Ethan lowered himself carefully, feeling the rough fabric of his uniform scratch against the leather chair. His heart pounded so loud he was sure everyone could hear it. "Now," a marketing director spoke up, "we've been considering a series of commercials featuring luxury family vacations, private jets, 5-star resorts. If I may." Ethan interrupted, surprising himself with his boldness. "How many regular families can relate to that?" The room fell silent. The marketing director blinked. "I mean," Ethan continued, his voice growing steadier. "Last summer, I took Sophia to the public pool. We packed sandwiches and spent the whole day there. She said it was better than Disney World. Not that we've been. But that's my point. Real family moments don't need fancy wrapping." A younger executive nodded, jotting something in her notebook. "He's right. We're trying too hard to sell luxury when we should be celebrating simplicity." As the morning progressed, more ideas were tossed around. Each time, Ethan offered his straightforward perspective. When they suggested professional actors for their ads, he talked about the authentic joy he sees at the playground. When they proposed scripted testimonials, he shared stories about real parents he'd met while working nights. Margaret watched it all with keen interest, occasionally catching his eye with an approving nod. During a coffee break, she pulled him aside. "You have a natural gift for this," she said, pouring herself a cup. "You see what others miss." Ethan shifted uncomfortably. "I just say what I think. That's exactly why we need you." She paused, staring into her coffee. "I started as a secretary, you know. Worked my way up through sheer determination. People didn't take me seriously either." Something in her voice made Ethan look closer. Behind her confident exterior, he caught a glimpse of old wounds. Battles fought and won at great cost. "Must have been tough," he said quietly. "It was." She straightened her shoulders. "But that's business." The walls came back up, and she quickly changed the subject to scheduling. The days that followed fell into an exhausting rhythm. Ethan would attend morning meetings, offering his insights on everything from advertising copy to product packaging. Then he'd rush home to check on Sophia, who was staying with a neighbor during the day. Evenings were spent pushing his mop through endless corridors, his muscles aching but his mind racing with ideas. One afternoon, he found himself alone with Margaret in the elevator. "How do you do it?" she asked suddenly. "Balance everything?" Ethan thought about Sophia's proud face when he told her about his day. "You just find a way, when someone depends on you." "Yes," Margaret said softly, then fell silent. Something passed across her face. Regret, maybe? But before Ethan could be sure, she was back to discussing budget proposals. The schedule was brutal. Some nights, Ethan could barely keep his eyes open as he cleaned. But every morning, Sophia would bounce around their tiny kitchen, calling him Daddy the Consultant, with such joy that it made everything worth it. "Did you tell them about my idea for the commercial?" she'd ask over breakfast. "The one with the daddy giving piggyback rides?" "Sure did, Princess. They loved it." Her face would light up, and suddenly his exhaustion didn't matter so much. Late one night, after a particularly long day of meetings and cleaning, Ethan finally dragged himself home. The babysitter met him at the door with an apologetic smile. "She tried to wait up for you," she whispered. There on the couch lay Sophia, fast asleep. In her hand was a slightly crumpled piece of paper, one of her drawings. Ethan gently took it from her fingers and smiled at what he saw. Two stick figures, one tall and one small, standing proud in front of towering skyscrapers. Above them, in wobbly letters, she had written, "My daddy can do anything." Ethan carefully folded the drawing and tucked it into his pocket, right next to his heart. Then he lifted his daughter, her warm weight familiar and precious in his arms, and carried her to bed. The morning sun painted golden streaks across the playground as Ethan and Sophia made their way to their favorite bench. The worn wooden seat had become their special spot over the years, where they shared ice cream cones in summer and hot chocolate in winter. Today, with spring flowers dotting the grass around them, Ethan knew it was time for an important conversation. "Hey, sweetie," Ethan said, helping Sophia onto the bench. "Remember how I used to just clean the building at night?" Sophia nodded, her legs swinging back and forth. "And now, you talk to the fancy people too." Ethan chuckled, pulling out a paper bag with their usual Saturday morning treats, 2 chocolate chip muffins. "That's right. But I want to make sure you understand what's happening. You know how sometimes at school you help younger kids learn to read?" "Uh-huh. Mrs. Thompson calls me her special helper." Sophia beamed, chocolate crumbs dotting her chin. "Well, that's kind of what I'm doing now. I'm helping these business people understand what families like ours need." He wiped her chin with a napkin. "I'm still doing my regular job at night, but now I'm also giving advice during the day." Sophia's eyes lit up with understanding. "Oh, now you wear 2 hats, Daddy," she giggled, reaching up to pretend to switch invisible hats on his head. "Cleaning hat? Talking hat?" Her laughter was contagious, and Ethan found himself grinning. "That's exactly right, Princess. 2 hats." Monday morning found Ethan back in the boardroom, this time in a clean button-down shirt he'd bought at a thrift store. The executives were discussing marketing strategies when Margaret suddenly fell silent, her usual commanding presence softening. "You know," she said, her voice unusually quiet, "we talk about family values. But some of us—" She paused, fingers tracing the edge of her coffee cup. "Some of us lost sight of what truly matters along the way." The room grew still. Even the usual typing and paper shuffling ceased. "I had a daughter," Margaret continued, her eyes fixed on the cityscape beyond the windows. "Sarah. She was about Sophia's age when I took over as CEO. I told myself I was doing it all for her, building a legacy." A bitter smile crossed her face. "By the time I realized what I'd sacrificed, she wouldn't even take my calls." Ethan sat perfectly still, watching this powerful woman's armor crack ever so slightly. He recognized the pain in her voice. It was the same fear that haunted him, of somehow failing his child despite his best intentions. "That's why this campaign matters," Margaret said, straightening her shoulders. "We need to show real families, real struggles, real love." She turned to Ethan. "Would you and Sophia consider being part of it?" Ethan's throat tightened. We're not exactly the picture-perfect family you're probably looking for." "Perfect isn't real," Margaret replied firmly. "What you and Sophia have, that's real." After a moment's hesitation, Ethan nodded. "I'll talk to her about it." That night, Sophia's cough echoed through their small apartment. Ethan rushed to her room, finding her sitting up in bed, face flushed with fever. "Daddy," she wheezed, reaching for him. "My chest hurts." Ethan's heart clenched as he gathered her into his arms, feeling the heat radiating from her small body. "I've got you, baby. Just breathe slow, okay?" He reached for the children's medicine on her nightstand, carefully measuring out a dose. After she took the medicine, Ethan sat with her, rubbing gentle circles on her back until her breathing evened out. But even as she drifted back to sleep, worry gnawed at his stomach. This wasn't her usual cold. Something felt different, worse. Still, the next morning, he put on a brave face as he packed her lunch and dropped her at school. He attended meetings, offered insights, all while his phone sat heavy in his pocket, waiting for another call from the school nurse. Later that evening, they sat together on their worn couch, watching as the city's weekly fireworks display lit up the sky. Sophia leaned against him, wrapped in her favorite blanket, her breathing still slightly labored but her eyes bright with wonder at each burst of color. "Look, Daddy, that one looks like a flower." She pointed at a golden shower of sparks. Ethan pulled her closer, pressing a kiss to her forehead. Despite the medicine, she still felt warm. "We're gonna be okay," he whispered, trying to convince himself as much as her. Sophia snuggled deeper into his embrace, her small hand finding his. "I know, Daddy," she said simply, her trust in him absolute and unwavering. Another firework exploded, painting their faces in brief, brilliant light. Ethan held his daughter tight, wishing he could feel as certain as she sounded. But for now, he just watched the colors dance across the sky with her, treasuring this moment of peace even as worry settled like a weight in his chest. The gleaming lobby of Manning. Whitfield buzzed with anticipation. Photographers adjusted their equipment while marketing executives made last-minute adjustments to the display boards covered in black cloth. Ethan tugged at his borrowed tie, a dark blue one Margaret had insisted on lending him after seeing his faded old one. Sophia twirled in her favorite dress, the purple one with tiny white flowers that her father had carefully ironed the night before. Her eyes sparkled despite the slight pallor in her cheeks. "Daddy, look, there are so many cameras." "Stay close to me, sweetie," Ethan said, keeping a protective hand on her shoulder. He couldn't help but notice how warm she felt through the thin fabric of her dress, but he pushed the worry aside. This was their big day. Margaret strode across the marble floor, commanding attention in her steel gray suit. But today, her usual stern expression had softened. "There's our star family," she said, kneeling to Sophia's level. "Are you ready for your big debut, young lady?" Sophia nodded enthusiastically. "I practiced my smile all morning." "She sure did," Ethan chuckled. "Used up half a tube of toothpaste." The room gradually filled with board members, executives, and invited guests. Ethan recognized some of the other families chosen for the campaign: a young couple with twins, an elderly grandfather with his teenage grandson, and a single mother with her 3 children. Real families. Real stories. Just as he'd suggested. Margaret approached the podium, tapping the microphone. "Good morning, everyone. Today marks a new chapter for Manning. M. Whitfield." She spoke about change, about understanding their customers as people first. Then she turned, gesturing toward Ethan. "I'd like to invite someone special to say a few words. Someone who helped us see what we'd been missing." Ethan's heart hammered as he walked to the podium. Sophia gave him a thumbs up from her seat in the front row. He took a deep breath, looking out at the sea of faces. "I'm not used to speaking to crowds," he began, his voice shaky. "Usually, I'm the guy you don't notice, keeping the floors clean and the trash emptied. But being invisible taught me something important." He paused, finding Sophia's encouraging smile. "It taught me that real strength isn't about being seen. It's about showing up every day for the people who count on you, whether anyone notices or not." The room grew silent. Even the photographers lowered their cameras. "My daughter Sophia taught me that success isn't measured in dollars or titles. It's measured in moments, like when she falls asleep holding my hand, trusting that I'll keep her safe. Or when she draws pictures of our future, always including both of us, no matter how big her dreams get." His voice cracked slightly. That's what family means. It's showing up, standing strong, and never letting go, even when times get tough. Several people dabbed at their eyes. Margaret stood to the side, her usual composure slipping as she wiped away a tear. This campaign isn't about perfect families, Ethan continued. It's about real ones. About the single mom working 2 jobs to send her kids to college. About the grandparents raising their grandkids. About people like me and Sophia, making it work one day at a time. The applause started slowly, then built to a thunderous wave. Sophia bounced in her seat, clapping hardest of all. Margaret stepped forward, squeezing Ethan's shoulder as she unveiled the campaign posters. There they were, larger than life. Sophia sitting on Ethan's shoulders, both laughing. Other posters showed the other families, all captured in genuine moments of connection. The tagline read, "Real families, real trust, real future." For one shining moment, Ethan felt invincible. He stood tall, pride swelling in his chest as cameras flashed. His words had mattered. His perspective had made a difference. Maybe now he could give Sophia the life she deserved. Then he heard the thud. Sophia had stood to run to him, but her legs gave way. She crumpled to the floor like a puppet with cut strings. The room erupted in gasps and shouts. "Sophia!" Ethan vaulted off the stage, reaching her in 3 desperate strides. Her skin burned against his touch. "Baby, can you hear me?" Margaret was already on her phone, barking orders. "Get medical here now. Clear the room." Sophia's eyes fluttered. "Daddy?" Her voice came out as a weak whisper. "I don't feel good." Security cleared a path as paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. Ethan held Sophia's small hand as they loaded her, his world narrowing to the weak pulse he could feel beneath his fingers. The ride to the hospital passed in a blur of sirens and medical terminology he couldn't understand. Hours later, Ethan sat in a hard plastic chair in the waiting room, his borrowed tie hanging loose around his neck. The doctor's words echoed in his head. Severe pneumonia, compromised immune system, extended treatment required. But it was the numbers that truly haunted him. The cost of the specialized treatments, the hospital stay, the medications. It was more money than he'd see in years. His janitorial salary, even with the consulting fees, wouldn't come close. He pressed his face into his hands, shoulders shaking. The sound of success and applause from just hours ago seemed like a cruel joke now. What good were pretty words and marketing campaigns when he couldn't even protect his own daughter? Through his fingers, he could see his campaign poster hanging on the hospital wall, father and daughter, smiling, strong. But here in the harsh fluorescent lights of the waiting room, that image felt like it belonged to someone else, someone whose world hadn't just shattered into a million expensive pieces. The steady beep of hospital monitors filled the dimly lit room. Ethan sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, his work uniform wrinkled from wearing it 2 days straight. Sophia lay peacefully in the large hospital bed, looking tiny against the white sheets. Dark circles hung under Ethan's eyes as he watched her chest rise and fall. "You should get some rest," a night nurse said softly as she checked Sophia's vitals. "We'll call if anything changes." Ethan shook his head. "I'm fine right here." His voice was hoarse from lack of sleep. The nurse gave him a sympathetic smile before leaving. Ethan leaned forward, gently brushing Sophia's dark hair from her forehead. She stirred slightly, but didn't wake. The doctors had explained everything in long medical terms, but all Ethan understood was that his daughter needed expensive treatments. Treatments that his janitor's salary and basic insurance couldn't begin to cover. The click of heels in the hallway made him tense. He knew those footsteps. Margaret Whitfield appeared in the doorway, her usual power suit replaced by casual slacks and a sweater. "How is she?" Margaret asked quietly, moving to stand beside Sophia's bed. "Stable," Ethan replied without looking up. "The fever's down a little." Margaret pulled up another chair. "I've been speaking with the hospital administration. The company has excellent medical coverage for consultants. If we adjust your contract..." "No." The word came out sharper than Ethan intended. "Thank you. But no. Ethan, please be reasonable. This isn't charity. It's compensation you've earned." He finally met her eyes. "I clean floors and empty trash cans. Let's not pretend it's more than that. You've brought valuable perspective to our company. Your insights." "My insights?" Ethan gave a bitter laugh. "I crashed a meeting by accident. Everything since then has been make-believe." Playing dress-up in a world I don't belong in. Margaret's face hardened. Is that what you think? That we've been humoring you? Down the hall, a cart rattled past. Sophia mumbled something in her sleep, and both adults fell silent until she settled again. My coworkers were right, Ethan said quietly. I got in over my head, started believing I could be something I'm not. And what exactly do you think you're not? Important, special. He swallowed hard. The kind of father Sophia deserves. Margaret was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice carried an edge of pain he'd never heard before. I had a daughter once. Have a daughter, I should say, though I haven't spoken to her in 15 years. Ethan looked up, surprised. Caroline. Margaret's fingers twisted in her lap. She was about Sophia's age when I got my first CEO position. The hours were brutal. I missed recitals, parent-teacher conferences, birthday parties. I told myself I was doing it all for her, building a better life, setting an example of female leadership. She stood and walked to the window, staring out at the city lights. By the time she was in high school, we were strangers living in the same house. When she told me she was pregnant at 19, I handled it badly, tried to control everything, just like I did at work. She walked out. The last thing she said was that I cared more about my company than I ever did about her. I'm sorry, Ethan said softly. Margaret turned back to him. I was too proud to admit I was wrong. Too proud to say I was scared of failing as a mother. By the time I realized my mistakes, the distance was too great to bridge. She moved closer to Sophia's bed. When I saw you burst into that boardroom, ready to face anything to protect your daughter, I saw everything I should have been. Ethan's throat felt tight. I'm just trying to keep her safe, to give her a good life. And you think you can do that better by pushing away help? By letting pride stop you from accepting the opportunities you've earned? Margaret's voice was gentle but firm. Don't repeat my mistakes, Ethan. Don't let your fear of appearing weak cost you what matters most. Sophia stirred again, coughing weakly. Ethan immediately reached for her hand, and her fingers curled around his. His vision blurred with tears he'd been holding back for days. I don't know what to do, he whispered. I'm scared. I know. Margaret placed a hand on his shoulder. But you don't have to figure it out alone. Ethan sat there for a long time, holding Sophia's small hand, feeling the weight of Margaret's words. Finally, he leaned down and pressed a soft kiss to his daughter's forehead. Please, he whispered, a prayer carried on barely moving lips. Please, give me strength. He squeezed his eyes shut, tears finally falling. I don't know how to keep going. The monitors beeped steadily in the quiet room. Outside, the city hummed with late-night traffic. And in that sterile hospital room, 3 people, a janitor, a CEO, and a sleeping child, formed a tableau of what family could mean when pride gave way to love. Margaret sat at an upscale cafe, her fingers drumming nervously on the pristine white tablecloth. She checked her watch again. 12:57. Her daughter Rachel was always punctual, even as a child. That hadn't changed apparently, because at exactly 1:00 p.m., a woman in her mid-30s walked through the door. Rachel looked just like her mother, the same ash-blonde hair, the same sharp green eyes. She paused at the entrance, scanning the room until her gaze locked with Margaret's. For a moment, neither moved. Then Rachel walked over, her steps measured and careful. Mom, she said simply, sliding into the chair across from Margaret. Rachel. Margaret's voice wavered slightly. Thank you for coming. A waiter appeared with water glasses, breaking the tension. They ordered a Caesar salad for Margaret, French onion soup for Rachel, just like she used to order when they'd have lunch together years ago. I was surprised to get your call, Rachel said after the waiter left. It's been what, 3 years? 4, Margaret corrected softly. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Rachel raised an eyebrow. Why now? Margaret took a deep breath. I've met someone. Not romantically, she added quickly, seeing Rachel's expression. A single father who works in my building. His daughter is very ill, and watching him. She paused, composing herself. Watching him fight so hard for her made me realize how much I've lost by putting work first. Rachel's fingers tightened around her water glass. It took watching someone else to make you understand? No, Margaret admitted. I've always known. I was just too proud to admit I was wrong. Their food arrived, and they ate in silence for a few minutes. Finally, Rachel spoke again, her voice softer. I missed you, Mom. Even when I was angry, I missed you. Tears pricked at Margaret's eyes. I missed you too, sweetheart. So much. Across town at the hospital, Ethan sat beside Sophia's bed, helping her with a puzzle. Her small fingers trembled as she tried to fit pieces together, but she insisted on doing it herself. Daddy? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, Princess? When I get better. She paused to catch her breath. Will you still talk in the big rooms? Ethan's heart clenched. Of course I will, he promised, trying to keep his voice steady. Good. Sophia smiled weakly. You look happy when you talk there, like a superhero. A tear slipped down Ethan's cheek before he could stop it. He quickly wiped it away, but Sophia had already seen it. Don't cry, Daddy, she said, reaching for his hand. I'm going to get better, promise. Ethan squeezed her tiny hand, unable to speak past the lump in his throat. Later that evening, Margaret arrived at the hospital, carrying a thick folder. Her eyes were red-rimmed but determined. She found Ethan in the hospital cafeteria, staring into a cold cup of coffee. I have an idea, she said, sitting across from him. The company is going to sponsor a family health initiative. We'll fund treatment for children like Sophia, create support systems for working parents. Ethan started shaking his head. Margaret, I can't. This isn't charity, she cut him off firmly. This is business, good business, the kind that actually helps people. She opened the folder, spreading out documents. But I need you to help present it. The board needs to hear from someone who understands what families really need. Ethan stared at the papers, his hands shaking slightly. I don't know. Today, Margaret said softly, I had lunch with my daughter. First time in 4 years. She met his eyes. Watching you with Sophia, it made me face my mistakes. Made me reach out. Sometimes accepting help isn't just about us, it's about the people we love. Ethan looked toward Sophia's room, where his daughter slept peacefully for the first time in days. He thought about all the other parents out there, sitting beside hospital beds, wondering how they'd manage. Okay, he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. I'll help. Margaret reached across the table and squeezed his hand. Sometimes the strongest thing we can do is let others help us carry the load. Ethan nodded, tears falling freely now. In that moment, he understood that accepting help wasn't weakness. It was part of loving deeply enough to put his daughter before his pride. The grand conference hall buzzed with anticipation, the air thick with the energy of barely contained excitement. Camera flashes strobed across the room like lightning, creating a dizzying display as reporters jostled for position near the polished mahogany stage. The massive chandeliers overhead cast warm light across the sea of faces, business executives in crisp suits, community leaders with hopeful expressions, and families who had come to witness something extraordinary. Ethan tugged at his collar, feeling the stiff fabric of the new shirt Margaret had insisted on buying him. The pale blue cotton felt foreign against his skin, so different from his usual work clothes. He took a deep breath, trying to calm the butterflies that seemed to be doing somersaults in his stomach. The microphone loomed before him like a towering challenge, its silver surface gleaming under the bright stage lights. Behind him, a massive screen displayed the logo of the Whitfield Family Health Initiative, a simple design that featured interlocking hands surrounding a heart. The image had been Sophia's idea, sketched during one of her treatment sessions and transformed by the company's design team into something beautiful. I never thought I'd be standing here, Ethan began, his voice shaky but growing stronger with each word. The microphone amplified every tremor, every breath, but he pressed on. A few months ago, I was just a janitor who accidentally walked into the wrong room. I was chasing after my daughter, terrified I'd get fired for bringing her to work. A gentle ripple of laughter spread through the crowd, warm and understanding. In the front rows, he spotted several of his fellow maintenance workers, their faces beaming with pride. Maria from the cafeteria gave him a thumbs up, and even gruff old Pete from security was smiling. Margaret stood beside him, her usually stern expression softened by something that looked remarkably like pride. She wore her signature navy blue suit, impeccably tailored and commanding respect. But today she'd added a small pin with a rainbow ribbon, the symbol of their new family health initiative. The tiny accessory seemed almost delicate against her powerful presence, but it spoke volumes about the change that had taken place in her heart. "My daughter Sophia." Ethan's voice caught for a moment, emotion threatening to overwhelm him. He paused, gathering himself, thinking of Sophia watching from her hospital bed via live stream. "She taught me that sometimes the strongest thing you can do is accept help when it's offered." He glanced at Margaret, who gave him an encouraging nod. Her eyes, usually so guarded and calculating, held genuine warmth. It was a look that reminded him of the woman who had sat beside Sophia's hospital bed, reading stories and bringing art supplies, never once making it feel like charity. "For years, I thought being a good father meant doing everything alone. I thought asking for help meant I was failing." His voice grew stronger, more confident. "I was wrong, dead wrong." The crowd sat in rapt attention as Ethan shared their story, his words painting vivid pictures of their struggles and triumphs. He described the late nights cleaning offices while Sophia slept in the break room, the constant juggling act of being both provider and caregiver. He spoke of the terror that had gripped him when Sophia first collapsed, the helpless feeling of watching his daughter suffer while knowing he couldn't afford the care she needed. His words weren't polished like a CEO's carefully crafted speech, but they carried the unmistakable weight of lived experience. They rang with the authenticity that only comes from walking through fire and emerging stronger on the other side. "What this company is doing today, it's not just about money or medical care," Ethan continued, his gaze sweeping across the audience. "It's about community. It's about dignity. It's about saying that no parent should have to choose between working and being there for their sick child. It's about recognizing that we're all in this together." Margaret stepped forward then, her heels clicking against the polished stage with purpose and authority. The sound echoed through the hall, commanding immediate attention. "The Whitfield Family Health Initiative," she announced, her voice carrying across every corner of the vast space, "will provide comprehensive medical support to employees' families across all levels of our organization." She paused, letting the weight of her words settle over the audience. "From our executives in the corner offices to our maintenance staff who keep our buildings running, every child matters equally. Every family deserves support when crisis strikes." The applause was immediate and thunderous, a wave of sound that seemed to lift the very roof of the building. Ethan saw tears in the eyes of several audience members. A young mother clutching her toddler, an older man wiping his eyes with a handkerchief. Teenagers who seemed to understand the gravity of what they were witnessing. A woman in the front row clutched her young daughter closer, nodding in understanding. Her expression spoke of her own struggles, her own fears about what might happen if her child fell ill. The relief on her face was palpable as the reality of the program's promise sank in. "But this program wouldn't exist," Margaret continued, her voice growing softer but somehow more powerful, "without the courage of one father who reminded us what truly matters. Sometimes our greatest wisdom comes from the most unexpected places. Sometimes the people we overlook have the most important lessons to teach us." She turned to Ethan, and for a moment, the powerful CEO seemed almost vulnerable. "Thank you," she said simply, but the words carried years of regret and newfound hope. After the presentation, well-wishers surrounded them like a gentle tide. Reporters called out questions, their voices blending into a cacophony of interest and excitement. Margaret skillfully managed the crowd with the grace of someone who had spent decades in the public eye, allowing Ethan to slip away to his most important appointment, Sophia's treatment session. The transition from the grand conference hall to the quiet corridors of the children's hospital felt like stepping into a different world. The excitement and energy of the press conference gave way to the gentle hum of medical equipment and the soft voices of nurses going about their caring work. At the hospital, the atmosphere was different from the despair of previous visits. Hope had crept in like sunlight through windows, changing everything it touched. The new treatment protocol had begun showing promising results, and the medical team spoke with cautious optimism about Sophia's progress. Sophia sat propped up in bed, surrounded by a rainbow of art supplies that seemed to have multiplied since his last visit. Colored pencils, markers, watercolors, and sheets of paper covered her bedside table and spilled onto the floor. She'd been drawing more lately bright, cheerful pictures that the nurses had begun taping to the walls. It was a wonderful sign of her returning energy and spirit. "Daddy," she called out as he entered, her face lighting up like a sunrise. "Did you tell them about our superhero team? Did you tell them how we save the world one day at a time?" Ethan laughed, the sound rich with relief and joy. He settled into the familiar chair beside her bed, the one that had become his second home during these long weeks. "I sure did, Princess. You're the brave superhero with the healing powers, and I'm just your faithful sidekick." "No way," Sophia protested with all the indignation a 10-year-old could muster. She reached for his hand with fingers that felt stronger than they had in weeks. "We're both superheroes. And Miss Margaret, too. She's like the wise mentor who gives us our mission." The treatments became their new routine, a rhythm of hope and healing that gradually replaced the chaos of crisis. Ethan would split his time between the hospital and occasional appearances at company events, his dual role as father and advisor feeling more natural with each passing day. His co-workers, once skeptical of his sudden rise, now greeted him with genuine warmth and respect. They had seen how he handled success with humility and grace, never forgetting where he came from. He kept his janitorial position by choice, finding dignity and peace in the honest work of his hands. But he also embraced his role as an advisor for the initiative, helping to bridge the gap between boardroom decisions and the real lives of working families. Weeks turned into months, each one bringing new signs of Sophia's recovery. Her strength returned gradually, like spring after a long winter, with small victories building into larger ones. Her laughter, once muted by illness and exhaustion, grew stronger and more frequent. The doctors spoke of progress, of hope, of future plans that extended far beyond mere survival. Then came the day they'd been waiting for, circled on calendars and counted down to with barely contained excitement. Ethan pushed open the hospital room door, wheelchair ready and decorated with colorful ribbons that the nursing staff had insisted on adding. Sophia sat on the edge of her bed, practically bouncing with excitement despite the lingering weakness in her limbs. She wore a bright yellow dress, her favorite color, the color of sunshine and happiness, and carried a backpack full of the drawings she'd created during her stay. Each picture told a story of their journey: stick figures holding hands, rainbows arcing over hospitals, and countless drawings of superheroes who looked suspiciously like her and her father. "Ready to go home, superhero?" Ethan asked, his heart so full it felt like it might burst from his chest. "Finally!" Sophia exclaimed, carefully settling into the wheelchair with the practiced ease of someone who had learned to be patient with her own recovery. "Can we get ice cream? The really good kind with all the toppings?" "You bet we can," Ethan promised, his voice thick with emotion. "We can get whatever you want." They made their way through the hospital corridors one last time, saying goodbye to the nurses and doctors who had become like family. Each farewell was bittersweet, grateful for the care received, but eager to leave this chapter behind. The pediatric ward that had once seemed like a prison now felt like a place where miracles happened daily. Near the main entrance, they found Margaret waiting, holding a bouquet of colorful balloons that bobbed and danced in the gentle breeze from the air conditioning. She had changed from her business suit into more casual clothes, slacks, and a soft sweater that made her seem more approachable, more human. "Couldn't miss the big exit," she said, handing the balloons to Sophia, who beamed with delight. "These are from everyone at the office. They wanted you to know they've been thinking about you." Together, they wheeled Sophia toward the hospital's main doors, a small procession of hope moving toward the bright world outside. The automatic doors sensed their approach and opened with a soft whoosh, revealing the world that had been waiting for Sophia's return. As they opened, warm sunlight streamed in like a golden river, making Sophia squint and giggle with pure delight. The brightness seemed to wrap around them like a promise made manifest, like hope given physical form. After weeks of artificial hospital lighting, the natural warmth of the sun felt like a benediction. "It's so bright," Sophia laughed, holding up her hand to shield her eyes while still trying to take in every detail of the world outside. "I forgot how bright and beautiful everything is." Ethan looked down at his daughter, her face tilted up toward the sun like a flower seeking light, and felt tears prick at his eyes. This moment, this simple act of leaving a hospital, felt like the greatest miracle he had ever witnessed. He caught Margaret's eye over Sophia's head, and they shared a knowing look that spoke of journeys completed and new ones just beginning. Sometimes the greatest victories were indeed the quietest ones, measured not in applause or headlines, but in the simple ability to walk into sunshine with the people you love. The sunshine warmed their faces as they stepped outside, Sophia's laughter carrying on the gentle breeze like music. It was a sound of pure joy, of healing, of new beginnings stretching out before them like an endless road of possibilities. The kind of sound that reminded everyone who heard it that sometimes, when we're brave enough to let others in, when we're willing to accept help and offer it in return, miracles can and do happen. Sunlight streamed through the high windows of the school gymnasium, casting warm patches across the sea of blue graduation gowns. Wooden bleachers creaked as proud families shifted in their seats, programs rustling in anticipation. Ethan Morales sat in the front row, his heart swelling with every breath. The years had softened the edges of his face, though determination still blazed in his eyes. His janitorial uniform was long gone, replaced by a well-fitted charcoal suit, one he'd chosen himself. "Thank you very much." He smiled at that thought. Beside him, Margaret Whitfield sat straight-backed as ever, her silver hair elegantly styled. Age had gentled her too, especially around the eyes. Her daughter, Sarah, leaned close to whisper something that made Margaret's face light up with quiet joy. The sight still amazed Ethan sometimes how far they'd all come. Principal Anderson approached the podium. And now, our valedictorian, Sophia Morales. Sophia rose from her chair on stage, her blue graduation gown swishing as she walked to the microphone. The little girl who once colored in the corner of a janitorial office had grown into a poised young woman. Her dark hair was pulled back neatly, and her eyes, so like her father's, sparkled with purpose. "When I was 10 years old," Sophia began, her voice clear and steady, "my dad burst into a corporate boardroom chasing after me." Gentle laughter rippled through the audience. He was the building's janitor, and I was supposed to be napping in his office. Instead, I wandered into the middle of a high-stakes business meeting. Ethan felt his cheeks warm at the memory. Margaret patted his arm knowingly. "Most people would have seen that moment as a disaster," Sophia continued. "But my dad, he did something extraordinary. When faced with judgment and embarrassment, he spoke from his heart about what really matters in life. Family, responsibility, and love." In the audience, several of Ethan's former co-workers nodded. They'd heard the story so many times it had become legend in the company. "That day changed everything," Sophia said, her voice softening. "Not just for us, but for countless families. You see, what started as an accident became a movement. The company's family health initiative has helped hundreds of children get the medical care they need, including me." Ethan's vision blurred. He remembered those terrifying days in the hospital, the weight of helplessness, the pride that nearly cost him everything. Margaret's hand found his again, squeezing gently. "My father taught me that real strength isn't about never needing help." Sophia's voice grew passionate. "It's about having the courage to accept it, and then using your story to help others." He showed me that one person speaking truth with love can ripple out and touch countless lives. In the row behind them, several executives from the company dabbed at their eyes. The marketing campaign that had started it all had evolved into something far more meaningful, a genuine commitment to community support that had transformed corporate culture. "Today, my father still cleans things up," Sophia smiled. "But now he cleans up broken systems, fixes communication gaps, and helps build bridges between boardrooms and break rooms. He showed me that no job is small when it's done with dignity, and no voice is insignificant when it speaks with authenticity." Ethan thought of his current role, part advisor, part mentor to new employees, part advocate for family-friendly policies. The path hadn't been easy, but it had been right. To my fellow graduates, Sophia's gaze swept across her classmates. "Remember this. Sometimes life's biggest moments come disguised as accidents. Sometimes our greatest strengths are revealed in our most vulnerable times, and sometimes the most powerful thing we can do is simply tell our truth and let it echo." She turned slightly, finding Ethan's eyes. "Dad, you taught me that success isn't measured in titles or bank accounts, but in how well we care for those who depend on us. You showed me that one person's courage can unlock courage in others." Margaret's daughter Sarah leaned forward, squeezing her mother's shoulders. The gesture spoke volumes about their own healed relationship, another ripple effect of that fateful day. "So here we stand," Sophia's voice rang with conviction, "ready to step into our futures. We carry with us not just diplomas, but the lessons taught by parents who sacrificed, by mentors who believed in us, and by life itself, which sometimes takes our wrong turns and makes them right. The audience burst into applause as Sophia concluded her speech. People rose to their feet, their cheering filling the gymnasium. Ethan stood with them, tears flowing freely now. Years of struggle, growth, and triumph washed over him in waves of gratitude. Through misty eyes, he watched his daughter's radiant smile, remembering the little girl who once dozed on hospital pillows. They had walked through fire together and emerged stronger. The community that had formed around them, Margaret, Sarah, the company, countless others had become family in ways he never expected. As the applause continued, Ethan whispered softly to himself, "We made it, kiddo." The words carried all his love, all his pride, all his wonder at the journey that had brought them here. In his heart, he felt the deep, settling peace of knowing that every hard choice, every moment of vulnerability, every step of faith had led to this moment, a life rebuilt by love, faith, and courage. Margaret squeezed his hand one more time, her own eyes glistening. Together they watched Sophia, standing tall in her moment of triumph, the living proof that sometimes the wrong door leads exactly where you're meant to be. Don't miss what happens next. Click the next video to see where Ethan's story goes from here. Subscribe so you never miss these powerful journeys, and drop your theories below because trust me, you'll want to talk about what's coming. Thank you for watching this story. It means so much that you've spent your time here with us, walking alongside Ethan and Sophia. I'd love to know where you're watching from and what part of this story touched your heart the most. Share your reflections in the comments below. If you believe in stories like this, stories of faith, family, and second chances, I invite you to subscribe and follow along. We're building a community of people who know that hope is real and love can change everything. And before you go, remember this: you are seen, you are valued, and your story matters. Until next time, stay inspired and never stop believing in the power of everyday courage.